Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Jerry Cooey.
I'm Deborah Nelson. Thanks for joining us.
And in this organization of Santa Rosa Week TV, what
Yes.
am I again?
Gopher? Best boy? No, we
Well,
have a best boy.
we're proud to bring you this TV show. Had a couple more people. You had mentioned to me.
Yeah.
We kind of have it's a very interesting mix of folks that are regular viewers of our
You'd be surprised.
of our little TV show here, and certainly, folks, we want to encourage you if you're watching this show. You can go to our YouTube page and you can go back and look at every show we've done. I mean, I'm very proud of the fact that of 4 FBI subpoenas dropped off in Santa Rosa County, we had done one or multiple shows on all 14 categories in those FBI subpoenas, and you didn't see that in other forms of media.
Sadly enough, none of the other media touched any of it.
Our very first show was on the private prison issue, folks. We were some 2.5 to 3 years ahead of the rest of the media catching on that we might have a problem here.
Well, and we were the ones that basically broke the Pullen property. I mean, we pushed that into the ground, and nobody else wanted to touch it. I mean, I don't ever recall seeing it in the news journal while we were covering it.
Right. So, you know, what we want to do today, folks, and although it's Santa Rosa Week TV, we had several items in the that was handled in the legislative session this year, and we want to close some of those things out. Now, it's interesting, according to what your perception is. I had a kind of a pretty powerful person told me that, well, this year in the legislature it was just completely dysfunctional, especially in the Senate. I said, well, that's not my perception. My perception is there was at least 4 major bills that didn't pass. They got the right answer on them. There was some very and we're going to go over some of these. There was some bills there that just had drastic negative connotations for folks across the state. The first one we're going to talk about, and I'm very proud. I'm going to give Senator Greg Evers a big double thumbs up. The septic tank bill, which was a very questionable bill to start out with. It was going to mandate that every septic tank in the state of Florida be inspected every 5 years. It was going to be a huge cost burden on the taxpayers of our county and all 67 counties.
Most people would have ended up having to replace possibly the drain field, but certainly the tank.
Right.
And it would have been literally tens of thousands of dollars.
Anywhere from $800 to $8,000 or $10,000, and and to give you a little
and it was requested by the septic tank industry, the servicing industry.
Right, that's what I was going to say. I mean, a little bit of history on the bill. When you go back and look at the legislature, the member of the legislature that posted that bill and pushed that bill, that individual was actually going to be term limited out and had direct ties to the septic tank industry. Now, I will tell you, certainly, if a person has a dysfunctional septic tank system, something needs to be done about it. But in Santa Rosa County, we have on the books now, and have had for many years, when you go to sell your house, there's a mandatory inspection.
Yeah.
And I think that's reasonable and fair.
And normally they have to pump it out.
Right.
Before they sell it.
You know, it was one of those reaching bills that gave no control of the local counties. The local government was going to be forced into having more employees and more paperwork, and I just didn't see it value added. Now I will tell you that, and another thing that I'm proud of in Santa Rosa County, we have started to seriously limit having septic tanks around our many bodies of water in Santa Rosa County. I think, for the most part, our specific county has done very well in in those issues. But the
Well, you
septic
still have a
tank,
couple developers who are looking for exceptions to that every time they put a cheap subdivision in.
yeah, absolutely. But I want to give a big thumbs up to Greg Evers. This bill hit. It got passed 2 years ago. It was actually supposed to take effect this year, 2012. And Senator Evers, honestly, he has worked, days, months, and years on gathering the support necessary to do away with this bill. And I am very happy to say that in a legislative session this year that bill was overturned. The important thing is that it was overturned and nothing additionally was added. It's over with. We're starting over from square one. I believe, as I've always believed, that, and there's actually law to back it up. It's called local rule. And look, we have 5 county commissioners up there. There's a lot of hoops to go through and a lot of people that need to be looking at this. And bottom line, out of 5 elected county commissioners, I would hope that the safety of your family and your children and the safety of the environment would be a high priority for those folks. And I personally, I think Santa Rosa County's done a very good job on it. As Deborah stated, we have been at a couple county commission meetings and where developers were trying to put septic tanks in rather than have tie into to a commercial facility near bodies of water, I might add.
Right.
And to date, so far, most of that has been stopped. But I'm very proud that bill got passed. Now, I will tell you, I normally, we try to focus on stuff in Santa Rosa County, our neighboring, at least the 2-county area. But there was so many things in Tallahassee this year. They just, look, I'm going to say it, they completely lost their mind this year.
Yeah.
I mean, the septic tank bill was just the start of it. The next bill that comes along was the prison privatization bill. Now, here's the danger of that bill. It was stated that it was prison privatization, but it actually opened the door to privatize every single function that our tax dollars go to.
Well, there were 2 separate bills, and one would have let them privatize any kind of government function they wanted without a study, without even telling anybody. They could just do it and then see if it worked.
Right.
And then the other bill specifically applied to prisons in South Florida, where certain private prison companies stood to gain gobs and gobs of money.
Look, as a conservative Republican, I certainly agree that there are things that the private sector can do better than the public sector. With that said, prisons is not one of those items. Number one, I have a very strong moral argument in my mind that morally it is wrong to incarcerate human beings for profit.
Yeah.
And secondly,
well, and it creates a moral hazard with judges being bought off to
absolutely
throw more people in jail.
And as we talked about on this show in Pennsylvania, that already happened. A private incarceration center, two different judges were being paid under the table to make sure they sent plenty of people over there to be incarcerated. But secondly, and to me most importantly, it's our tax dollars. And even though Florida's laws say that even if we privatize something, it doesn't free them from the Sunshine Law. I will tell you that one of the problems that's occurred in some of the privatizations already is that the state says, okay, company XYZ, you're going to take this over. Well, company XYZ puts their record-keeping facility in Arizona, and then when Joe Citizen from Florida tries to get records about how they're spending money or whatever, and there's been several cases already where folks have had to go to court to force it. and it's just not a place I want to go, and I don't want to go with it with the privatization issue. And look, we outlined it on this show repeatedly. Behind closed doors, the prison that's in Santa Rosa County was born. One special favor after another for a private for-profit corporation. I think if something is worth privatizing, it's worth doing it with the sun shining on it. But once again, I'm very happy to say that the private prison bill was defeated, and I will say again that our Senator Greg Evers was one of the no votes.
Yeah.
There's 40 members of the Florida Senate. The vote was 21 to 19. Greg Evers voting no. And I've learned a little bit more about some of the behind the scenes things, and I just don't like how things break down. You know, here we have a senator that voted his conscience. He listened to his constituents. He voted his conscience. And but I'm very proud. I know Senator Evers took a lot of heat over that, but I'm glad he stood up and was counted.
Well, this bill was about nothing but pure corruption. I mean, this was just blatant, open corruption. This bill,
right?
Handing gifts over to my friends in private industry.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now the next one that we're going to talk about, and look, folks, this one is so far out there. When I first heard about this bill, I'm thinking I saw the legislature getting bolder this year, but this one is completely off. I don't know. I can't even imagine somebody how they even dreamed this up. They actually wanted to pass a bill that gave legal immunity to all deceased members of the legislature, all living members of the legislature, all retired members of the legislature, including their staff and all their family members until they die.
Yeah.
And
this is the type of thing you see in the third world, when the tin pot dictator takes over, and he wants to do things by the book to make it look. You'd expect this out of Iran. Really.
It really shocked me. I mean, think about that, folks, for a minute. Here you have the House and the Senate who make the laws, and you know, if I was one of those members, I wouldn't pass anything that I was going to get sued over.
Right.
You know what I see for the most part is when you do the will of the people, when you do things right and right-minded and that's legal and moral and ethical, you don't have to worry about liability.
Well, you're not really supposed to break the law, even if you're in the legislature. You're not exempt from it. I mean, Richard Nixon, I guess, thought he was exempt, but
right.
He found out otherwise too. And
thank goodness that bill only lasted a few days before it was gone.
They floated it up there, though. Just, you know, they do that chest balloon.
Right.
Just to see, maybe nobody's paying. We know the newspapers aren't going to cover this.
And
some of them ended up doing it. I think the St. Pete Times got it.
I was reminded of all the way back to Bill Clinton when they would float political balloons about every other day just to see how people would take it.
How big of suckers are they yet?
Yeah, and here you go to grant immunity to everybody that's part of the government. I mean, it's ridiculous. The correct thing occurred in that bill, and everybody that was a part of trying to pass that thing. I hope you get defeated in your districts during this election this year.
And I'm pretty sure Don Gates initially was actually part of the committee that drafted that bill.
Absolutely. Well, And
then I think he later said, "Well, I don't like it anymore. I used to like it, but now I don't."
Yeah. When
I didn't understand it.
When the freight train and the bulldozers was coming that way, all of a sudden he didn't like it anymore.
He changed his mind.
Another bill that we want to talk about a minute, folks, and I'm gonna tell you that I'm a part of public education. I certainly support public education. I'm glad that my dollars go to public education. Now, Do I think that some changes need to occur? You better believe that I think some changes need to be occur. But overall, public education is very important. It keeps everybody on a even keel. And I'm just going to tell you point blank. I have studied this at length. Jeb Bush has pushed very hard while he was governor, and now that he's back to being a private citizen again. His group is working night and day for the, in my opinion, I'll use the word destruction, to destroy public education in the state of Florida.
They want it because they want the money. They want to get that money themselves.
And one of the things that we noticed in this bill, you know, it sounded so good. It was called the trigger bill, and the wording in it was, well, you know, if you as a parent, if you don't like how things are going, or if you think your school district is, or your school is not doing very well, well, then you as a parent can pull the trigger. But what they wanted to do was give parents the authority to close down a private school and to turn, or a public school, and to turn it private. Yeah. And just a bad bill. Do we need to make some changes in public education? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Across the entire state of Florida, we are heavy in management and light on teachers.
And some of the salaries in management are just ridiculous.
Absolutely. There needs to be some legislation passed that will hold each district to a percentage of management people, and that's it. We need to be focusing on the classroom. You know, the thing that's interesting to me, there's so many people out there that want to change education from the way it used to be done. And what's interesting to me, those people that want to change education went through the same education that I went through, where
Jeb Bush did.
where it was memorization of math and all of these things, and these folks have become very successful, but yet they want to take it, and I agree with Deborah 100%. It's about dollars, and I'll tell you this, folks. Private K through 12, you know, maybe $3,000 a year is kind of the going rate. Maybe a little bit more than that. In public education, we're spending over $10,000 a year per student. And what I fear is going to happen is, if they keep pushing to privatize more and more schools, they're going to say, well, you're paying 10 now,
right?
And we'll give you a better education under private circumstances. So wouldn't you agree to pay the same amount?
You'll see a McDonald'sization of it, and then as always happens, more and more money goes to the upper management and less and less. And when you go to a private school, even a nice one, they've still got far fewer amenities, you know, gymnasium, pool, whatever, that the public schools have.
Well, they put their money towards education, and
not every time.
And the thing that I see is, if private schools are successfully educating kids for $3,000 to $4,000, and public schools is at 10, you turn it over to a private entity, and they still get the 10. They're going to educate those kids for far less than 10.
Oh, sure. Well, they may not educate them. They had cases in D.C. where they were then paying these management companies that have formed just to do this, and they were paying themselves most of the money. And you had kids that were coming in that, you know, they were sitting there and they'd get make work all day. Right. I mean, this was documented in D.C. and it would happen. I mean, what gets me about this is I promise you, and I've taught briefly. I didn't teach a lot, but I did some teaching. The schools that perform best are the ones where the parents are the most involved. So if you've got a poorly performing school, I guarantee you've got a school where parents are, for whatever reason, are not involved or less involved. Right. So you're going to say that parents that aren't involved, that aren't interested, that aren't in there, those are the ones that you want to give the ability to squabble about where the money goes and decide where I mean, it's as dumb as it gets. Yeah. And that's what they wanted to do. Well, the good news is, folks, the trigger bill was defeated. It didn't last very long either. This is another example where, even though the commanders of the Senate and the commanders of the House wanted that bill to pass,
it didn't pass. It went away. And let me tell you, the privatization bill, the trigger bill, the immunity bill, you can rest assured you'll probably see it again. But for this legislative session, they got the right answers on them. Now, there's one more that I'm going to talk about, and that is the Sunshine Law. And in 2010, late 09, 2010 was when we had the first DCA and the fifth DCA said the Sunshine Bill doesn't use the word speak, so you can't speak at a government meeting. Okay? And myself, along with a lot of other people across the state of Florida, worked very hard in letters of encouragement, in pleading with our legislature to correct the Sunshine Law so it used the word speak. The bill was written and passed in the Senate 40 to nothing. Okay, the one thing that I have said over and over to some of my legislators is that give me protection in the counties. Okay, you guys, I can't stop what you do in Tallahassee, but give us the protection in all 67 counties. The Senate passed it. The House wrote their bill. They did tweak the wording a little bit. All objections to that bill was removed. It was a green light. And the Speaker of the House, Dean Cannon, and if there's anybody that happens to watch Santa Rosa Week TV that is in Mr. Cannon's district, you need to dump your House member. He's taking up space. It is ridiculous. He would not allow a vote. The Speaker of the House controls what goes on the floor to be voted on, and he would not allow a vote. Now, Will Weatherford is the incoming Speaker to the House, and I'm proud to say that when the session ended, he sent Barbara Peterson an email, apologized to her that it didn't get a vote, and he was quite reassuring that it would be handled in the 2013 legislative session. But let me say this, folks. I've been very patient about this. Any right-minded person knows that a citizen should be allowed to speak. I don't care what idiot circuit judges have to say about it, local judges have to say about it, or an idiot federal judge that was in charge of the Maritime Park. They're all wrong. Citizens have rights. We have the First Amendment of the United States of America. We have the amendments in the state of Florida that all say we have a right to redress to peacefully assemble for a redress of grievances, and it's the right thing to do. And I've been very patient in this, and I'm going to give Mr. Will Weatherford and the House. Hopefully, the Senate will pass it again in 2013. But I'm telling you right now, if they do not correct this problem, we are going to gather together. We are going to have a constitutional amendment. And it's going to include the judicial branch, the executive branch, and the legislative branch, that all of them is going to have to follow the Sunshine Law. And I've had enough of it. I feel like I've been overly patient in this already.
Well, I mean, it's about time the legislature be subject to Sunshine Law. I mean, I don't understand why they aren't to begin with. I mean, you can go up there. They don't have to give you a record. I mean, it's...
Well, and here's some of the stupidity, folks. Barbara Peterson, certainly the First Amendment Foundation, was against the trigger bill. They had some 200 citizens that showed up at the allotted time when that bill was going to be discussed. The chairman allowed one person to speak, and the person that was allowed to speak was a guy from California who had passed the trigger bill over there. And you know, I am tired of being shoved to the side. I'm tired of automated emails. I'm tired of people getting in their automobile and driving 3 and 4 and 8 and 10 hours to be there in time to argue against bad legislation and not being allowed to speak. All right, it's ridiculous, and if that means the legislative session has to go on for 6 months, if it has to go on for 365 days a year, that's what needs to happen.
Well, it shouldn't be such a challenge to pass this.
Well,
especially when they all were in favor of it.
It just blows me away. Like I said, I'm going to give them 2013, but at the end of the legislative session in 2013, if the citizens do not have protected right to speak at all government meetings, then we're going to go to work on it. And I hope they do the right thing. But I thought they were going to get it this year.
I wouldn't count on it.
And it was all petty politics by Dean Cannon. And just so you'll know, I'm going to send a copy. Once this gets on YouTube, I'm going to send it to Dean Cannon's office. So let me look in the camera again. Dean Cannon, that was ridiculous, pitiful. You're a sorry excuse for a legislature, and I don't appreciate your petty little political games.
And I want to just say that I'm betting at least half, if not more, of the people who voted for it did so with the assurance from Dean Cannon that it would never hit the floor and they had nothing to worry about.
Exactly.
Guessing it's more like 80%.
Exactly. Now the last thing that I want to talk about is redistricting. Deborah and I went to the meeting in Pensacola, Florida, and 47 people spoke. And of the 47, at least 35 of them all looked at Senator Don Gates and said, you should have started on this a long time ago. It's going to be a problem. It's going to mess up the elections. It looks bad. It doesn't look professional. On and on and on. I mean, the citizens were really fired up about it, and absolutely everything that those people had to say is now coming true.
Yeah.
Because here we are, folks. We're in the second week of March, and the Supreme Court has rejected the redistricting maps for the Senate. They said the House maps were okay, but the Senate maps were not. So now we're going to have a special session. We're going to spend more of your tax dollars because we have to pay the power bill and the water bill down there in Tallahassee and traveling expenses and all those things to go back to do something that should have been handled to start out with. And I'm not happy in the least. Hopefully they get it worked out pretty quick and we can move on and get this election behind us. But that's kind of a recap of the high points of the Tallahassee session this year. I'm Jerry Cooey.
I'm Deborah Nelson. Thanks for watching. Good night.